In what way is endocannabinoid system a bridge between body and mind?
You see, our mind is what regulates everything. That's the forefront. You have to understand that as a collection of molecules, there are only two things that really come into us. One is information, and the other is mass. Well, the information is monitored by our nervous system. So our sights, our sounds, our smells, our touch, all of the things that interface us with the outside from an informational point of view comes through the nervous system. And in our brain, the human brain, the endocannabinoid transmission system is the number one neurotransmitter system in our brain. So obviously we have our cannabinoids doing something very significant there. Now if you look at the immune system, it's a different story, because there we see a dominance of the CB2 receptor, and what the CB2 receptor does is it turns on fat burning to protect the cells from making too many free radicals that would cause death and mutations and potentially lead to cancer or autoimmune diseases. So when the immune system is doing its thing, it's generating a lot of free radicals that have to be corrected and compensated for by turning on recycling. Cellular recycling is what occurs when our cells are burning fat. Beta oxidation, autophagy, self-eating, autophagy, self-eating. All of those things are the same thing. And if we don't have the right balance between recycling the damaged molecular pieces of our cells, and those were damaged by the free radicals that were created from slight imbalances or large imbalances when we were using the efficient energy producing mode of the electron transport system and carbohydrate metabolism. So the simple answer here is we need to use more cannabis and we need to consume fewer carbohydrates so that we can live longer and healthier.
Connection is your central nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
Do cannabinoids affect that? Well, very much so. The receptor, the CB1 receptor, is the most abundant G protein binding site in the human brain, as it turns out. It's everywhere. Well, it's not everywhere. It's located in certain parts, but it's very plentiful. And it can be manufactured on particular stimulation. So endocannabinoids are extremely important.
When we talk about cannabis, we talk about holistic healing. Do you think cannabis will change our perception of healing?
Yeah, it's unavoidable, because health is a holistic phenomenon. And if we try to create health by linear mechanisms, it's not in tune with the creative nature, God. However you want to label that, for me it's generalized open system dynamics, the creative nature of flowing energy. But there are characteristics, and the characteristics involve cooperation and being able to do more and more in a more efficient manner. Essentially what goes on is life becomes smarter by making the universe stupider quicker. So let's learn that and learn how to become smarter quicker while we make the universe stupider quicker, and allow ourselves to enter into a new level of organization on this planet, where new technologies of clean energy and where cannabis leads to the increased mind-body connection, and where diet and cannabinoids and other nutraceuticals, and on occasion radical medicines, when they are needed to shift the flow beyond what we can shift them for whatever reason with the alternative mechanisms. There is potentially a place for the fine targeting, but that can be applied via conventional medicines. But from my perspective, that would be done in such a very minute quantity to just shift the unfolding. Because keep in mind, remember the butterfly effect. A butterfly can flap its wings in one part of the world and affect the weather in another part. That's part of the nature of how nature is, how when you're dealing with flow-dependent systems, how a perturbation in the flow, a single molecule can kill you, amplifies through the system. We have to be aware of that, because that's how everything works. And we want to be in harmony with our environment, with ourselves, and we want to optimize being and living. It's constant change and constant guidance through self-reflection, self-adjustment, guided again by the nature of nature, so that we can embrace what's going on, what we're part of, rather than not understanding it or fighting it. Let's go with the flow. Let's learn what that means collectively and individually as we move ourselves, our families, our communities, our societies further from equilibrium, as we extract more potential from sunlight.
Have the latest, I shouldn't be saying fashion, but almost is, in both nutraceuticals and in medicine, is personalized medicine. Well, personalized medicine means adjusting what you do to makeup of the patient. Holistic, we have not lost it completely, but lost it to some extent due to the structure of our medical system. In the past, you had a doctor who knew grandmother, grandfather, mother, children, because he looked after the family. And he knew everybody, so he knew that maybe mom was slightly hysterical, he knew the dad was more balanced, and he knew the children. Today, at least, for example, in context of United Kingdom, you go to the doctor, you have 5 minutes, the doctor maybe has never seen you, and if you have pain in your leg, he is most likely to send you to a specialist. So, you can very easily end up with 5 specialists, each one looking at a different part of your body without any solution to your problem. Yes, because it's this is how we have worked. So whether cannabis can make a difference to it, perhaps. But I think it's not just cannabis, it is just the way we look at medicine, just the way we look at patient. A patient who is very stressed is going to have a problem with accepting medication. Maybe they won't even take it. So if you don't factor the fact, the circumstances, the stress, it's very difficult to say, okay, here is the medication, you take the medication for high blood pressure, while perhaps elevating some of the family problems or psychological problems or problems in marriage. There are many different problems. Maybe that would reduce the blood pressure, not just the medication. So it's a always complicated story, I think.
Everyone I work with, I say, to really help you, I'd have to come home with you, watch what you eat, watch what you drink, your lifestyle, the time you go to bed, to really get to know how to treat you. That's the way I look at the way medicine should be. My thinking changed when they sent me to India for a year, my PhD work. I went away from allopathic type medicine, single silver bullet molecule. When I originally believed that I could find a compound in a plant that might work for cancer, for example, and synthesize it. That was my thinking. I was trained like that. Little did I know, right? Then in India, my thinking came to realize how useful herbal medicine was, which had been around for thousands of years, whereas pharmaceutical medicine has been around less than 100.
Let's say that 10 people is smoking the same strain, the same cannabis. And each individual will experience differently the psychoactive effect of THC. If somebody gets anxiety from smoking cannabis, is it because of cannabis or is it because it uncovers something in us?
As a scientist, I immediately go to the physiological reason for that. I once met a neurochemist who said, I can tell you what you think before you think and why you're thinking it. Put it this way, a major side effect that the medical profession or the literature often talks about is psychosis. I look at psychosis as a very broad term. The cannabis people I know tend to be toward the tree hugger end of that spectrum. They tend to be kind, gentle, dog-loving people. That's the side effect of cannabis.
It is known that people were using cannabis in rituals and in meditation. Do you think that the term recreational use limits for what purpose cannabis can be used?
Very much so. Good question. We're going to legalize cannabis in Canada next year, and they're calling it recreational cannabis. I don't know what that means. I don't know what they mean by recreational. I mean, is there such a thing as recreational alcohol? If a young person smokes a joint, it'll calm them down, alter their mood, make them more empathic. I see that as therapy. I don't see anybody smoking cannabis for not a therapeutic effect.
Well, I disagree, no, because what is recreational use? Why do we like it? In order for us to like something, it's got to be giving us pleasure. Ultimately, the things that should be giving us the most pleasure are the things that move us further from equilibrium and make us healthier. And the fact that we keep increasing cannabinoid activity in the human brain from an evolutionary perspective simply tells you that when you're using cannabis now, recreationally or not, doesn't matter, when you are using cannabis now, what you are doing is you are experimenting from your biochemical uniqueness with how that uniqueness can transform into the more stoned future that has always occurred. So it allows you to open your mind, to take in the inputs, and to create yourself as an evolutionary probe for survival of humanity. And those people who are able to embrace the concepts of peace and love and cooperation are the ones that nature naturally selects for. So the whole idea of the future, the meek shall inherit the earth. Well, who are the meek? Not the aggressive, angry people who are cannabinoid deficient. They're the people who are cannabinoid sufficient, who are entertaining themselves with their minds and with creation of things. And unfortunately, we've put up with the stupidity of the ignorant leadership, what I call governmental illness, that's been using their cannabinoid deficiency to solve their fears, to try and gain the peace that they would have if they could only take a joint and relax. Instead, they try to get it by control, because then they have the illusion they won't be subjected to the unknown, because all change, good or bad, is stress. And if you don't have enough pot, it doesn't work for you. But people who don't know that are not the people who are likely to use the correct solution. So they're naturally partitioning now. The world is partitioning into the backward-looking people, the blips who are cannabis deficient, and the forward-looking people who are cannabinoid sufficient and who embrace change and become part of the future instead of becoming part of the past.
But there should always be enough place for education and for people to learn also about how to handle psychoactive activities. It's a matter of maturity of individuals and society.
Acquire knowledge of good wine. It's the culture of it's the culture of don't touch it and don't tell me when you get drunk versus have a glass of wine, enjoy it, but understand that if you have a bottle you'll get sick and this is not right. I really think that education plays a huge role for telling young people don't touch it and let them do it in a forest, behind the house, somewhere where parents don't know, opens the possibility that they will have bad quality stuff, that they will take too much, that maybe they'll take something contaminated. If you do it, it's the culture. Mm-hmm. It's the culture of actually understanding the plant and educating young people.
Life experience is not important if it's not scientifically proved. And you said that we should look at life from dynamic perspective, not from a static one. All the scientific proofs are somehow static.
That's the problem. Our whole scientific establishment is not in harmony with what science is supposed to be about, discovering the truth. Instead, what we do, for example, is we have our theories as to how cannabis works. And then, because of that, we should be able to cure this particular observable negative phenomena, whatever the illness or imbalance may be. That's just a dumb way of looking at things. You got to look at the flow. Most of the medicines that are developed are all in the context of carbohydrate metabolism, of differentiated cells communicating with their environment. The problem is their communication in their environment is what's created the problem, because something is wrong in how you've established those things, largely driven by lack of cannabis and by too many carbohydrates, getting too many free radicals, basically disorganizing the organization that's necessary to maintain the distance from equilibrium.